Nigeria, by extension Africa, battles a growing youthful population and with little or no meaningful engagement leaves a ticking time bomb on our hands. We are a blessed continent with great wealth, both in people and material. Our focus on ways remains driving conversations that affects us all. Topics in the news, social concerns, politics, leadership, governance, empowerment, resource management, conflict management, finance, SME sustainability, technological innovation, food security, health, education, brain drain, our well-being, citizenship, and much more. Our goal is to continuously drive these conversations, keep them burning at the table to effect a positive change both for our nation and continent. Ways, what are you saying, has a secret ingredient that completes the conversation every single episode, and that ingredient is you. Our past conversations shaped our yesterday. To shape our tomorrow, we must keep talking. So, I want to hear you. Be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays. And let's all have our say.
Well, the cost of living wants to kill the living in Nigeria. I mean, I never thought I'd find the time where I would have to tweet about that, but today I did make a tweet that the cost of living is about to kill the living, especially in Nigeria. Well, the cost of living crisis in Nigeria has become a major challenge for its citizenry. The country is experiencing a surge in prices of everyday essentials, and it's not making it difficult for people to afford basic necessities. Food inflation has hit a staggering 39.84%, with the price of staples like rice, bread, and eggs skyrocketing. So yes, the cost of living crisis in Nigeria is a complex issue, and it requires urgent attention from policymakers and also you. Addressing the crisis will require a multi-dimensional approach that involves regulating rent. I wish that can become our reality, especially in Lagos, stabilizing food prices and providing social safety net for vulnerable population. Now, to add, just imagine the cost of living crisis in Nigeria. Now, we have to grapple with the fact that there is a 14% tariff hike by President Donald Trump of the United States. It's another episode of your favorite primetime show, Ways. My name is Messi Ebokbo. And today we'll be discussing the cost of living crisis in Nigeria and the 14% tariff hike by President Donald Trump of the United States of America. There's been a trade war that's been going on. Of course, our guest, Agule, will be joining us shortly after we're done with this time out. Now, remember, Ways is always about you. You are the why in the Ways. So if you look at Ways, there's a why in it, so you are the why. And so be part of the conversation every single day and add your voice to the discussion. How you can do that now is just head straight to our YouTube channel at Official Upgrade TV and hit the subscribe button, like, share, and invite your friends to join the show now. When I open up the phone lines, I would really love to hear from you what you have to say about this topic. But the big question today that I'm throwing out, and it's okay to send if you already have the WhatsApp number, you have the phone lines. I would really like to find out, how are you coping with the cost of living in Nigeria? Don't forget, there's always a quote to ponder on. And so for today, the cost of living is going up and the chance of living is going down. Now, think about this. The cost of living is going up and the chance of living is going down. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll just head straight to what's in the news. Please stay with us.
Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light from my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we'll bring you the latest insights, innovation, an in-depth analysis of Nigeria's energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we will analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business.
Thank you so much for staying with us. If you're just tuned in, it is your favorite primetime show. It's called The Ways. And we're just going to head straight to what caught my attention in the news at this point in time. I've got three of them, three stories that caught my attention. And first of all, is that of very popular, you would like to say, very notorious. I mean, I don't know if the word is notorious or popular, but we'll leave it at that. He's the Nigerian rapper Odumodu Black. I've literally been asking everyone in the studio to be sure not to mispronounce his name. He revealed that he was offered monies to campaign against Peter Obi, and so I do have a bit of what he said. So that's on the screen, a bit of one or two tweets and then the follow-up. So he said, I was offered life-changing money to campaign against Peter Obi, but I refused. And then another one, he said, ask Abbas, I was offered money and I had never seen to campaign against Mr. Peter, but I turned it down. Telling him to promote my new album is not too much to ask, as I am not the one to seek favors. I sacrificed my life for this man. No, ma'am. Machine is coming. That's what he says. Or he said in that tweet. Right. So as much as I'm not that fan, I'm not very, so if you follow me on social media and everywhere, I'm not very quick to just put out my thoughts and my opinion about some stuff. But when I saw this one, I was almost tempted to tweet, but it's not my nature. That this would actually, suffice and will make it for what's my interest in the news today. The truth is, political choices should ideally not be based on sentiment. And I think that that's the mindset that we've had over always. I mean, we vote, it has always been sentiment. And that's why it looks as though sometimes we never get it right, because that's not what it should be. So political choices should be based on governance, capacity, and national interest, rather than personal alliance, ethnic sentiment, political affiliation. It shouldn't be about, because this man is my tribesman, because I like the shape of his head, because, he used to be my neighbor. It should be about, can he deliver? Can he do the job? Does he have what it takes? That's the quality. It shouldn't be, who cares? Doesn't really matter if it's my father or my mother. It should be whether they have the capacity. And so I thought to bring this mindset, it could be a PR stunt. We understand how these things work. It could literally just be a PR stunt to promote his song. But I think that there's something literally wrong with this mindset. And this mindset is the same mindset a lot of Nigerians approach the polling vote and the voting, when it comes to the period of politicking and casting our vote. It's usually this same mindset. Away from that, there's also another story that caught my attention. So if you've been following the saga between the Senate President Akpabio, Godswill Akpabio, and of course Senator Natasha, there's just been a lot of back and forth with it, which I know you already abreast of. So today, there's been an update that the court has barred both parties from granting interviews in Natasha's case against Akpabio. So it therefore means that the court now, a federal court in Abuja, gave this ruling in the file that by suspended Senator Natasha against the Senate President Godswill Akpabio and 3 others from granting press interviews on relating issues to the case. The question that a lot of people have asked is that where lies democracy in all of this? When you talk about democracy, you want to talk about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, our humanity as a people, and all of that. But I just leave you to ponder on that particular one. And moving away from that story, there's also still on Akpabio, it's the fact that the Senate President Akpabio, Godswill Akpabio, seeks public retraction and apology from Senator Natasha. And he has threatened legal action against the said senator, of course. So you already know what's been happening. I mean, there was a rally, roads were blocked, She's not supposed to come in. She came in an helicopter, you know, and now there's been. She also, I think during the rally, I remember vividly, and also granting interviews, she talked about her life being under threat, and if anything happens to her, there was an allegation of a threat to life, and Senator Akpabio should be held responsible, among others. However, what actually interests me is the fact that she's also responded. Unfortunately, I'm not sure we have that tweet or we have the headline to that where she says, oh, it's okay. I dare him to, you know, let's go to court. I dare you. I mean, this is me not quoting verbatim now, but paraphrasing. It's quite interesting for someone to tell you, if you say I'm a thief and someone says, Messi, I dare you to. That's a lot of confidence right there. That's a lot. I really don't know if she has the evidence to prove that the senator, the Senate president, you know, there's any evidence as to threat to her life and assassination and all of that. But let's see how all of this unfolds. And that's the much that we can take at this point in time. So we just take a quick break. When we return, we'll come together and discuss and ponder on this very critical issue. Please stay with us.
Some that fill us with joy, others that test our strength. Welcome to Heartlines. This is our space to explore the highs and lows of human connection, the love, the heartbreak, and resilience that shapes our life. From relationships to friendships, parenting to partnerships, and so much more. Every week, we share stories and conversations that define us, navigating love, separations, the struggles of parenting, dealing with anxiety and managing the pressures and stress of life. Real conversations that bring us closer, helping us heal, grow, and connect. So join me Mondays through Fridays at 10 p.m. for Heartlines, the show where we'll connect hearts, have real conversations with real people, one story at a time.
And thank you so much for staying with us. If you just tuned in, it is your very favorite primetime show, The Ways. And it's about time for us to get into the real gist, you know, I would like to say the crux of the matter. So come together, call your friends, call your family, call everyone. I mean, let's sit in front of a screen and let's have this discussion, because this discussion is very important. Gone are the days where we sit back and say, it doesn't concern me. The world is very global. The world is interconnected. Whatever happens in Uganda would literally affect us somewhere in Nigeria. And that's how connected it is. It concerns us. And so we can't always fold our arms and you know, throw in the towel and just say, it is none of my business. It doesn't concern me. No, it concerns you. And so that's why I am inviting you tonight and saying, let's come together, discuss, ponder on a critical issue that directly affects you, myself, and the economy, the businesses, and every Nigerian citizen. The current cost of living crisis and the impact of the recent 14% tariff hike on Nigeria exports to the United States. Your participation is crucial, like I said earlier on, in finding solution. As you all know, Nigeria has been grappling with economic instability in recent years. Inflation, currency depreciation, escalating living costs have made life more challenging for all of us. No one is exempted. Now, the additional burden of 14% tariff on our exports to the United States, it is time for us to come together and find a solution to these pressing issues. So for tonight, my big question to you is, how are you really coping with the cost of living in Nigeria? I'd like to hear from you wherever it is that you're listening or watching from right now. Please do well. to sending your messages, go and so join the conversation. When it's time, we'll open up the phone lines and we'll have that conversation. But for tonight, political analyst and oil and gas expert is also a friend of the house. Agule, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. And I'm happy to be here. And good evening to our viewers globally.
All right, then. Agule, 14%, I beg your pardon. And it's been the tariff price. What am I even saying? 14% tariff hike by the President of the United States. I mean, it's not just exclusive to Nigeria. So we can actually see that it's a global war that's going on. We've seen that there's a list for Africa, but we're very concerned about Nigeria. My first question to you is, should Nigeria retaliate?
Thank you very much for the question. Currently, using the data for last year, Nigeria has a positive balance of trade with the United States. What that means is that we exported more. We exported about $5.7 billion worth of goods and services to the United States. And we imported $4.2 billion worth of goods and services from the United States. What then that meant is that we sent more to the United States than we received from them. So in terms of this tariff hike, it's going to affect us more because the goods that are leaving Nigeria, the goods and services that are leaving Nigeria to be consumed by the American people will be more expensive. The government of the United States is placing a hefty tax of 14% on them, and that is going to affect trade between the United States and Nigeria, because if the cost of the landing cost of the goods and services coming from Nigeria become uncompetitive in the American market, then those who have been buying these goods and services from us will no longer buy them in the same quantum that they have been buying. So that is going to affect our economy in terms of the business that we are doing and the inflow of foreign exchange that is coming from these transactions. The question is, should Nigeria retaliate? Well, it is difficult to say. I believe that the government of Nigeria must be thinking about the best way to respond to this. But we need to probably look at it a bit more to say that what is it that Nigeria is selling to the United States that is worth about $5.7 billion? A majority of that is crude oil. We're selling to the United States a huge chunk of crude oil. So let us say our crude oil lands more expensive in the United States, and those people who are buying our crude oil from the United States will no longer buy our crude oil. The question is that, do we have somewhere else we can drop our crude oil? And the answer is yes. Even Dangote refinery, which is based in Nigeria, is looking for Nigeria's crude oil and is not even getting it. And then there are other parts of the world that will be looking for crude oil as well. So I don't think in terms of impact, it's going to negatively affect Nigeria, because the major product that we sell to the United States for which this tariff will affect has got other markets that we can transfer this to. If we say we should retaliate, it's only going to make Nigerians' lives more difficult. Because let's say a car is coming from the United States that we're importing into Nigeria. If the Nigerian government should say, okay, let us also retaliate with 14% tariff on that car, it only then means that the cost of that car will be 14% more to the Nigerian user. And given the hardship that we are already undergoing from different sources since this government came into being, it is not something that I would personally recommend for the government to do, because it will only end up making our lives more difficult. It will also be inflationary to our economy, and then it will be out of reach for most Nigerians.
So we already understand that this is actually a trade war that's going on, and it's a weapon of control that's literally going on. We've seen that China has imposed a 34% in terms of retaliation tariff imports on the United States on this particular trade war. So don't you think that it's time that Africans and Nigeria itself should begin to, try to take some form of control here?
Yes, of course it is. For me, I would recommend a reprisal in the trade war if we are able to source internally the goods and services that we are importing from the United States. If we are able to source internally or source from elsewhere, how much we are spending in terms of importing goods and services from the United States, then fair and nice, we can impose those tariffs, and perhaps we will not import those things again from the United States, because the United States goods and services coming to Nigeria will be more expensive in comparison to elsewhere. So if we have those alternatives, we can very much as well go ahead and do it. But we don't have much of those alternatives. For instance, if we say we're not buying from the United States, things like medical supplies, things like cars, things like petroleum gas, even technology and all of that, can we source it for cheaper elsewhere? If the answer is yes, then of course, let us go ahead and impose these tariffs on US exports to Nigeria, so that if we don't buy from them, then it's good for them. But if we can't source it from elsewhere, and I'm saying this with all sense of responsibility in terms of the fact that the Nigerian economy is not producing much. We're really not producing much. We're depending so heavily on imports into the Nigerian economy. And that is why I would say the government has to study the data. They have to look at everything. They have to take a 360 degrees view of this before they will decide on what to do. If a decision is going to hurt Nigerians more, I would say, please let them not take it, because we're already hurting so badly. But if a decision is not going to hurt Nigerians,
All right, I think that we're experiencing a bit of network issues. From our guest, Nick Agule, hopefully he's able to reconnect and we can establish that contact and connection. But if you're just tuning in, okay, so I'm being told that he's back now. Nick, if you can hear me, please go ahead with your thoughts. Nick, can you hear me?
yes. So thank you very much. Yes, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Go ahead,
Can you hear
please.
me?
Yes, please, I can hear you.
Okay, fine. So thank you. So the point I was trying to make is that retaliatory tariffs should not just be what the Nigerian government should go for. The Nigerian government needs to study this carefully. Like I said, our biggest export to the US, which will be affected by this tariff, is crude oil. And we have other sources of crude oil. Selling our crude oil, including Dangote Refinery, that is looking for crude oil that it can't even find. So now that Nigeria's crude oil is going to attract 14% tariffs, that means it will be 14% more expensive to the American market. If those people importing Nigerian crude oil from American market decide not to import our crude oil, we can put our crude oil to other uses, like to Dangote Refinery or to other economies around the world who are also looking for crude oil. Now, coming to us applying tariffs on US imports, what I was trying to say is that the government needs to take a holistic look at that to decide whether, if we apply those tariffs, because one thing we must always remember is that if the Nigerian government retaliates with tariffs, it then means that whatever we're importing from the United States is going to be more expensive to the Nigerian consumer. So the question is that, do we want to visit more hardship on the Nigerian consumer by increasing the cost of goods and services that we are importing from the United States? Can we get these goods and services from elsewhere? If we can get them from elsewhere, then I can say, let us go ahead and apply the tariffs on the US, on the imports from the US. But
Okay.
if we can't get them for cheaper elsewhere, I would say, please, enough is enough. Nigerians must not take on additional cost from this trade war again.
All right, then. So you have stated clearly, and of course, we know that Nigeria's major export is oil, but we also cannot ignore the fact that Nigeria is also big on exporting other products like, cocoa or the textiles. I mean, there are all other things that Nigeria is exporting to the US, and which has also contributed to the livelihood of our economy. So my question here is the 14% tariff on these sectors, because it will affect as well. It's not just going to be on oil. How does that affect the everyday Nigerian?
So the 14% tariffs imposed by the United States government on Nigeria's goods and services exported to the US economy is going to affect the Nigerian economy in the sense that it will make our goods and services more expensive in the US economy. And if the importers of goods and services from Nigeria decide not to buy from Nigeria again, then the sources of production of those goods and services, we have to look for new markets. If they find new markets, then our position will remain the same. But if they cannot find new markets, then it's going to impact negatively on us, because it will then mean that the production sites will have to shut down or scale down their operations, and that will lead to job losses. It will also lead to less revenue for government that depends on taxation and all the other multiplier effects that will come into effect. So basically, like the example you gave, if Nigeria is exporting cocoa to the United States, I'm not sure how much of it we're exporting, because once you take crude oil out of the equation, we're not exporting significant quantities of other goods and services to the United States. But let's just say we're exporting cocoa to the United States. And now the United States has applied 14% tariff on that cocoa, 14% more expensive in the US market than it is now. Now, if it leads to a situation where the people who are buying our cocoa in the United States decide not to buy our cocoa again, perhaps maybe they want to buy cocoa from where the tariffs are less or there are no tariffs, or they even want to grow their own cocoa, whatever be the case, if they no longer turn attention to our cocoa, the immediate thing to happen is for our cocoa producers to look for alternative markets. And if they get alternative markets elsewhere in the world, then they place our cocoa in those markets, and our position will remain the same. It's also that the cocoa producers in Nigeria may decide that instead of exporting raw cocoa, we cannot try and process the cocoa and even take the processed cocoa into chocolate factories that are here in Nigeria, that we can now start producing chocolate, which you can then supply to the Nigerian market, the domestic market, and the export market. I mean, that's not going to come up immediately, but it could also be the reason why investment can come into that sector to build such processing facilities. So if we have alternative market for our cocoa, both domestic or foreign, it will also keep our position steady. But a situation where if our cocoa is no longer going to the US market, and it cannot also go to any alternative markets, then we have a real problem on our hands.
So, which brings us to, I mean, this particular one. Let's talk about this, because it's already difficult. It's already tough for us. Inflation is at the highest level you can ever imagine or think of. I'm not sure if there's any economy. You know how it is that, economics will say is super inflation, super hype. I really don't know what we can call whatever it is that we're experiencing right now in Nigeria in terms of economic terminology, but that's the case for us. So we're already hurting from these. Imported goods are very expensive. The value of our naira is depreciating every other day. Do you think that this is going to really add to it? Is there going to be anything from this that would affect us? Are we expecting any other, pain to come from this particular policy pronouncement?
The pain will come only if Nigeria retaliates. If Nigeria retaliates, there will be pains. Because what has happened now is that the US have imposed tariffs on goods and services leaving Nigeria and going to the US. If Nigeria retaliates, let's say in equal measure, by applying 14% tariff on goods and services that are coming from the US into Nigeria, it will automatically translate to higher prices to the Nigerian consumer. One product that we import in heavy quantities from the US is cooking gas. Surprisingly, a lot of people will not even believe that. But we are importing LPG, that is liquefied petroleum gas, popularly known as cooking gas from the US in huge quantities. So if Nigeria now says we are going to retaliate on these tariffs and we're going to impose 14% on cooking gas, that means the cooking gas will land in the Nigerian market at 14% higher than what we're buying now. And that is going to cause a lot of pain to Nigeria. And this government, like you rightly said, they came into power and they have embarked on what they call reforms. And these reforms have resulted in price hikes in petroleum products, electricity, telecoms, even interest rates has gone up, food prices have gone up, petroleum products like liquefied petroleum gas, which is cooking gas, have gone up. Nigerians have had to face these increases in prices. And that is what is constituting a huge inflation, like you rightly said. Now, the problem is that the government is doing reforms only on the demand side of the economy. The government is not doing reforms on the supply side of the economy. And how do I mean? Let us take electricity, for instance. The government came on board and they said, oh, we are not going to pay electricity subsidy again. So they decided to now ban the electricity consumers. And they said those in band A, we are not paying subsidy for you. So the price was hiked to probably about, I can't remember the exact number, 200 and something naira per kilowatt hour from say about 60 naira. Now, if you call that a reform, fair and good, it's a reform. But the problem is that the cost of electricity is this high because the supply of electricity is not much. As we speak today, Nigeria is supplying only 5,000 megawatts of electricity. And because of that low output, the pricing will tend to be higher. It's a basic law of economics that the lower the supply, the higher the price. So one would have expected, yeah.
I'm really sorry, but we have to go on a quick break, Nick Agule. Please hold on to that thought. When we return, we'll definitely continue with the conversation. Please stay with us.
Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light for my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we will bring you the latest insights, innovation, and in-depth analysis of Nigeria's energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we will analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business.
Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you are just tuning in, we've just been talking about the 14% tariff hike by President Donald Trump of the United States and its impact on the already strained economy, if you like to put, we say, the cost of living crisis in Nigeria. And our guest is Nika Agule, who is a political affairs analyst who's joined us this evening via Zoom. And please, let's hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation by sending an SMS or texting us via WhatsApp to the number 081-8038-4663. I repeat, 081-8038-4663. SMS or WhatsApp to that number. Let's hear your thoughts about the conversation. The big question for today is, how are you coping with the cost of living in Nigeria? Wherever it is that you're listening in from, would like to read and hear from you today. The phone lines are also open, please. You can go ahead and call. The number is 070-2500-7749. I take another one is 070-424-24 070-1 42424 and 20. Let's hear what you have to say about our country, Nigeria. Now, Nika Agule, once again, thank you for joining and staying with us. Some people believe, just as you continue with the thought, we had a thought. At this point, a lot of people are saying that this is when Africa should come together, that our borders must become bridges with intra-African trade. We're looking at the intra-African trade at 15% and the European trade at 67%. A lot of pundits are saying that this is a time where African trade must become, must be a major concern. It should be a bridge. But how can this be when you talk about even movement within African countries, you can't even guarantee full movement even as members of the same continent? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, you are correct that this tariff and war, the trade war, this tariff hike that has resulted, or it has a potential for a trade war, should actually be a wake-up call to Africa. That look, we have to put our act together, because if we don't do that, we are going to face an existential threat from the likes of the United States. So I very much agree with your viewpoint. African nations need to come together. We should actually have a common economy. There are statistics that are read out. For instance, the African continent, if you look at the African continent, is bigger than the other continents in the world. The African population is bigger than the population of the other continents in the world. The African market is bigger than the other markets in the world. So if Africa becomes a common market with a custom union, meaning goods and services can move across borders as if they are moving from Lagos State to Ogun State. And we also have a common custom union where once a good is imported into any African country, it can then move as if it is a locally produced good. That the African continent will generate a lot of economic activities to the point that we may not even need any other continent, because the African continent is self-sufficient. Because if it is a crude oil or petroleum products, we have it. If it is agriculture, we have it. If it is solid minerals, we have it. If it is water bodies, we have it. If it is the climate, we have different types of climate activities, be they agriculture, tourism, or anything, right? So we have everything. African continent can stand on its own. And you have made the point that it is so hard to travel in Africa. Look, a friend of mine, he wanted to travel from Nigeria to another African country. He went to Europe and then connected a flight from Europe to travel to another African country. So African leaders, under the banner of the African Union, now need to see what is happening now with this needless trade war that Donald Trump has generated in the United States as a wake-up call, as a clarion call for them to begin to look inward and to build our economies and remove borders so that we can not trade more freely with ourselves. We can allow capital to cross our borders and invest in our economies to build an Africa that will be the envy of the whole world. That time has come.
All right, let's hear your thoughts. Remember, like we said, you can join the conversation by sending an SMS or WhatsApp to the number 081-8038-4663. That's the number to send your messages to, SMS or WhatsApp. Now, the phone lines are also open, and you can call the numbers 070-250-077 and 49, or you can call 0701-424 and 2420. That's the number to call. Looks like we have a caller here. All right, then. So, Nick Agule, if you look at the cost of living, right, the crisis that we're faced with, it didn't just happen because, you know, these things will happen. There were policies that our government, I mean, from government to government, so it's been like a trickle-down effect from the previous government to another government, and the trickle-down effect has continued. There's policies that have led us to where we are. How can we get ourselves out of all of this, and how can the people, you know, survive in this, especially if you look at the inflation that we're experiencing? The cost of very basic things have really gone up, and the cost of every other thing has also gone up. You want to talk about rent in a city like Lagos, you can't even imagine. So how do we get out of this loophole that we're in from the side of government and from the people?
If you describe the cost of living in Nigeria and you look at, you will discover that Nigerians are really facing hardship. I can give you an example that we should connect with our viewers. You know, our first daughter is a primary school teacher in the United Kingdom. She's a primary school teacher. And she goes to work by bus, by public transport. She doesn't even have a car yet. So it costs her £1.75 to go to work and £1.75 to come back. So in terms of transportation, that is £3.50 per day. If you multiply that by, say, 20 days, 20 working days in a month, that is £70. What is her salary? Her salary is £3,000. So what that means is that she's paying just about 2% of her. Compare her to a Nigerian worker who is earning 70,000 minimum wage. That worker's transportation cost could probably take up to 50% of that their salary. That a 70,000 minimum wage in Nigeria cannot buy a bag of rice. My daughter, if she wants to buy rice with all her salary in a month, she could buy almost 100 bags of rice. So a Nigerian worker cannot afford a bag of rice with his pay. My daughter in the UK can afford almost 100 bags of rice. That is to tell you how hard, the hardship that the average Nigerian worker is undergoing. And the reason for this is simple. We are in a high cost and low income economy. So costs are high, income are low. What can be done to solve this is either for government to increase the income level. So raise the minimum wage from the 70,000 that it is now to some 250,000, 300,000 that Labour was asking for. But that solution is a bad solution. We tried that solution before through the Udoji Awards in the 70s, and it killed the Nigerian economy because inflation went right through the roof. So the other solution, which is the better solution, is to increase the output. Because when you increase the output, cost will fall. As we say, the higher the supply, the lower the cost. And the Nigerian government, as I see it today now, is really not doing anything much on the output side. So, like I started to talk about electricity, we are now paying so high for electricity, but the output of electricity has remained 5,000 megawatts. So, while we are not expected that in 2 years, the current government should jack up electricity output from 5,000 to say 10,000 or 20,000, in 2 years, we needed to have seen the projects that are in the pipeline that will ensure that Nigeria will have more electricity than the current 5,000 megawatts. And I'm not seeing those projects. And of course, the very first one, of course, is that the transmission company of Nigeria is a bottleneck in the whole electricity value chain in Nigeria, and government hasn't touched it. Let us look at something like food. Food is very expensive now. Why? Because number one, the farmers that used to produce this food for us, they are now in RDP camps, haven't been driven away by bandits. Number two, the food to complement is now more expensive because the dollar has moved from 460 official rate to over 1,500 today. What is government going to do to bring down the price of food? It's for government to ensure that we in Nigeria are now producing the food that we eat. And then we have to start with government taking positive action to drive away bandits from the farmlands and return farmers back to their farms and give these farmers machines to cultivate our lands with. Take something like petroleum products. We are now buying petrol at nearly 1,000. It was even at more than 1,000 before, but now less than 1,000, whereas it was less than 200 when the current government came into being. What is the government doing to help with the supply of petroleum products in the market? That Agule refinery is a private business. They are there for profit maximization. If they see an opportunity, they will take it. So right now, they see that there is no competition with them in the Nigerian economy in terms of supply of petroleum products, and they can afford to charge any price for us. What is government doing with Nigeria's 4 refineries with a combined capacity of 445,000 barrels per day? If those are back on stream, then it will be a situation where the refineries belong to us, the crude oil belong to us, and we will then be able to sell the crude oil to ourselves in a much better deal, perhaps in the 300, 400, max 500 naira range, compared to the almost 1,000 naira range that we're buying now. You know, we're importing everything. We're importing pharmaceuticals, we're importing machinery because we don't have the steel plants. So what is government doing with the steel plants? What is government doing in terms of our domestic gas? Instead of flaring our gas, what are they doing to harness the gas and push it into the Nigerian market so that we'll have more gas at cheaper rates? What is government doing with public transportation? As we speak today, you can only catch a train from Abuja, our federal capital, to only one state capital in Nigeria, which is Kaduna. What is government doing to bring train services to the other 35 state capitals in Nigeria to connect with Abuja so that a train's journey is much cheaper? Yeah.
I'm really sorry that I have to cut you at this point because that caught my attention. And which brings me back to the conversation that we had yesterday. Because when you say what is government doing, we see that government has been borrowing, taking loans from the World Bank. Really see what's really happening across the country. Now, some people also believe that the reason we're in this quagmire is because the government in itself has been because of the action of government of borrowing from some of these institutions that also have some form of control over our economy. So do you think that we're facing this hardship because of government's action, and especially in terms of the borrowings and with some of these institutions? Is that why we're where we are right now?
Yes, part of it is what is the reason why we are where we are. The government doesn't need to borrow. I can make a reference to the telecoms. We used to have a government company called Nitel. For those who are old enough, they will remember Nitel. And Nitel used to take budgetary allocation from the government to supply telephones to Nigeria, but we never saw telephones. A telephone line was quite expensive, and you had to go and queue up to make a call. And what the Obasanjo government simply did was to liberalize the sector, to allow for private sector to bring in their money. So the MTNs and the Airtels and the Glos and the Nine Mobiles, they didn't lend money to Nigeria. We didn't borrow from them. Instead, we opened up the space and they brought in their capital. They invested in capital and expanded the availability of telephone lines in Nigeria from 500,000 to over 220 million today. And Nigerians are busy talking on the phone, and these investors are busy cashing out. That is what the government open up the space in infrastructure, roads, rail. Let them open up the space in steel. Let them open up the space in power. Let them open up the space in domestic gas. Let them open up the space in agriculture. Let them open up the space in power. Let them open up all these spaces so that investors can bring in their money. As we speak today, trillions of dollars are floating around the world looking for favorable environment to make a landfall. And if Nigeria can create that favorable environment, this investor capital will come here. It will not be loans on our balance sheet. It will be foreign direct investment that will come and boost the Nigerian economy. Look at what telecoms is doing to our Nigeria, cover all other sectors in the Nigerian economy. So that is what is happening. When the government borrows, we all know that government bureaucracy in Nigeria is not efficient. And so they are going to use that money inefficiently. And for me, that is another thing that has happened recently, where there is now a craze for development commissions. So all the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria now have development commissions. Why do we need development commissions? We already have ministries. And instead of giving the budget to the Ministry of Works to develop our infrastructure, you now take part of the budget and go and create a development commission and give the development commission operating expenditure, and then give them some capital expenditure. So at the end, the Ministry of Works is spending operating expenditure, all the development commissions are spending operating expenditure, and there's really little now left for capital expenditure, which now leads the government to go and borrow again. How can we be borrowing such that our debt service bill is now about 100% of our revenue? If you go to a family where the combined salary of the father and the mother is just about how much they need to pay in debt, you know that that family